Welcome back to the Behind the Well show. I'm your host, Roger Abel. I'm back in studio with Elias Randel. This week, we're going to be answering listener questions very similar to what we did last week. If you have a question you're looking to get answered, please reach out to the show. We'd really enjoy helping others through the questions that you guys have. Lynn wants to know, I hear you and other financial people talk about figuring out how much you want to spend in retirement. But are my expenses in retirement really going to be that much different from what I spend now? How do I go about figuring it out? First off, Lynn, great point. Most people assume that their expenses will automatically drop in retirement. I remember when I started in this business, started at an insurance company. Well, when people retire, they'll live on 75% of what their income was when they were working. Well, here's what I know about people today. Most people that are working, most of their paycheck is allocated towards bills and expenses. If you retire tomorrow and you are spending $5,000 today, are your bills and expenses going down $1,500 a month?
No.
I'm guessing
the only
it's
thing
not.
that goes away at retirement is your contributions.
That's it.
Your savings and your money going into investments.
Elias, I think retirement spending, I think you would agree, depends a lot on lifestyle choices, health, housing, and inflation. And a lot of people don't give this much thought going into retirement. It's one of the things we really work with people on is taking a step back, just having them kind of envision, what does the first year of retirement look like? Because one of the things we have done in our planning, and we have a guide we're putting out on this about how to really go about figuring out what you're going to spend. But we really like to break the spending goals into three categories. What are the needs? So that's property taxes, food, all of those things that we are going to have from the day we retire until the day we're going to die. Here's what's not included in needs. Travel, cars, all of those other things that are above and beyond. Because for years we would have people come in, Elias, and say, hey, what are your expenses? We just say, what are your expenses? And they'd say, well, they're $8,000 a month. And they included all their luxury, their travel, their entertainment, all those things. And what we've learned over the years is that people don't spend the same amount of money the day they retire that they do when they're 85. And our goal is to help people get the most out of retirement in the years when they can really enjoy it. So what we've worked really hard on with people is, what are the needs? Okay. So if you're spending $8,000, maybe the needs are $3,000. What are the wants in retirement? We want to travel to Europe twice a year, assign a dollar amount to it. Now, how long do we think we're going to be healthy enough to do that?
Mid-70s.
There you go. Like, someone will tell you 80, be like, that's great. We can plan on that.
And some people might.
Some people might.
For the most part, mid-70s.
Out of all the customers I work with, I have one person over age 80 who's actually still traveling the same that they did when they were 70.
What a beast. What a tank.
Just, I don't know. He's got the right genes. So you have your needs, you have your wants, and then you have the wishes. What are the things you don't think you could accomplish, but if you could financially do it, you would like to do it? And that's how we help people start to prioritize and figure out exactly what they can afford to do in retirement. And I will tell you, when you go through this process, a lot of the things you didn't think you could do, you absolutely can do. Because when we switch to this strategy of needs, wants, wishes, when the needs are lower for 30 years in retirement, it allows you to spend more in the beginning. But if you have to stretch out this needs number because it includes the wants that you're not going to spend when you're 91 years old, you're not going to live as fulfilled of a retirement. And a lot of times, you mentioned you're going to travel till your mid-70s, right? You mentioned that number.
For the most part, yeah.
It may not be because you can't do it. And I'll give you a scenario. I have a client going through this right now. 77. They used to go out to dinner with their friends 3 times a week. Husband used to golf 18 holes 3 times a week. Well, they have one friend is in a nursing home. One friend had a stroke. The husband golfs 9 holes 1 time a week because they don't move around as well. They're not spending the same amount of money now that they were 4 years ago. They're not going out to eat 3 or 4 days a week. They're not golfing 18 holes 3 or 4 days a week. They're not entertaining their friends. And it's not necessarily because they can't do it, but they have this friend group that they're becoming a little less healthy. And also, I'm going to guess the motivation level goes down. They get grandkids, great grandkids. All these things start to happen that changes the structure of how you spend.
Yeah. Gosh, and sometimes you almost want to ask people, what are you waiting for? Spend some money, live it up a little bit.
We do it a lot. Here's why we bring it up to people. We've watched, I don't even know, 1,000 people in this office retire, I would guess.
At least.
At least 1,000 people we watch retire. We've watched how people spend money. As you know, one of the biggest problems I have with financial planning software is that they assume if we're going to spend $5,000 a month today, we're going to increase our spending 3% every year.
Not realistic.
The first time, number one, nobody comes in every year and says, give me a 3% raise. Never happened. It likely never will. In 20 plus years of doing this, the first time I really ever remember people consciously calling me up and telling me they need to increase their distribution because they can't afford things was 2022. That's the first time.
Which is understandable.
Yeah. And it's
Which
people.
is understandable with what happened.
People
with
are getting
inflation.
5,000 and said, hey, I need an extra 500. But think about this. If people don't increase their distribution over time, they're inherently spending less money. If your distribution stays 5,000 for 15 years, you spent less money 15 years later because inflation did eat into it, whether you know it or not. But I think that's just the effect of people slowing down and doing less fun things, less out to eat, less activities as they get older.
I think if more people viewed retirement the way we do, I think people would retire earlier. I really do believe that. I think people would retire a little bit earlier and just plan on having less money in the older stages of their life.
You think they would opt and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to either retire earlier or do more with my life before I retire?
Yeah.
Which you can do that, but that probably requires some pretty next level planning.
It does. And it's a different way to think about your money, but I think there's plenty of people out there that they could retire between 55 and 60 and just have a little bit less for the rest of their life.
Do you think people don't like the idea, just subconsciously, of admitting at some point in the future I can't do what I do today?
I think that has something to do with it. That I think people unrealistically expect they're just going to keep continuing to live the same life. And it's really not. It's longer term thinking too. So it's so much easier to just think about today and what's going on. I do think there's a little bit of anchoring that happens. Once people have over $1 million in their investment accounts, they do not want it to ever see it go below. I don't know why, but it's in my opinion, the most anchoring number. And then I'm sure it's each, right? It's okay. Then once you have 2, and then once you have 3, so people really aren't willing to spend down. They're not really willing to spend down their assets.
I know I talk about my situation a lot. I plan on, I have my date of financial independence, but because I probably watched all this happen, I take a realistic purview of what I think's going to happen. I told my wife, whatever you want to do it before you're 74. Not that you can't do it after that, but
you shouldn't plan on doing it after
that. Right. Like your energy levels change. Your desire to do different things changes. In fact, my wife brought this up the other day. She used to love to travel and travel all the time. Like a month ago, she goes, I just don't enjoy doing it as much as I used to. And maybe it's because we've done a lot of it, or she's just burnt out over the summer. We travel quite a bit. But over time, what you think you're going to do and what you do are often going to change. I think the big takeaway, if you're struggling on figuring out what you're going to spend in retirement, nobody has identical spending patterns pre and post retirement. And really the goal is, how do I build this flexible plan that works with my core values, my goals, my desires, and what do I want to accomplish in retirement? And then it's not just looking down and saying, well, I make $6,000 a month and I spend it all. That's what I'm going to continue to do. You might be able to spend more than what you were making in the first 5 or 10 years of retirement and dial it back. It's why we really encourage people to sit down with a planner, whether it's us or somebody else, and walk through this and really spend a lot of time figuring out what you're going to spend in retirement.
It won't do any harm.
Hopefully it'll do a little bit of good.
I would think it'll build your confidence and allow you to really know what you can do.
Elias, let's move on to our next question. This is from Rick. Our oldest son is a freshman in high school this year. We have saved a little for his college expenses. Does it make sense to prioritize that for a few years instead of funneling extra money into our own investments?
Well, do you want my personal answer for this?
Yeah,
That's what I'm going to give.
I want your off the cuff personal answer, and I'm going to give you my
so
off the cuff answer too.
If this is my house and my oldest son, I'm not prioritizing college over my own financial success. I personally don't prioritize that right now. I'm going to help my kids with that, but it's not more important to me than my personal financial outcome.
So I think if I was working with Rick, the first thing I would do, I would figure out where Rick stands from a retirement standpoint. Once we know, like, does Rick have enough saved now to be able to afford to funnel money to kids' college? Then we can make a decision. But just an arbitrary decision of this versus this without knowing where they stand is tough. So first thing you need to do, Rick, you need to know where you stand from a financial standpoint. Elias, do you know what this reminds me of? Do you remember the meeting? This is about a decade ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, we had an individual. We had a guy
come in and
I'll tell the story.
He didn't like the advice.
Yeah. So here's what happened. We had an individual come in, and we sat down. He wanted to know where he stood from a retirement standpoint, and we showed him. And he really needed to save. I want to say it was like $1,500 a month, which he could have done. But he made the comment to us, I'm saving this money for my kids' college. And that's more of a priority for me than retirement. And we told him, I understand that you want to help your son with college, but I'm yet to see a child help their parent retire. If you can't retire with dignity and the way you want to live, what good's it going to be if you got your kid a college education? They're going to be worrying about you. And there's ways for kids to pay for college. So first off, determine where you are. If you're on track for retirement, that's when you would consider, in my opinion, doing college savings or helping kids pay for college. College doesn't have to be expensive. Kids choose to make college expensive, or parents choose to make college expensive. We have a friend of ours who came out of college with no debt and a law degree.
That's not a bad deal.
She didn't have a ton of scholarships, but guess what she did? She worked 30 hours a week through college. I think that my dad taught at a university, he taught at a college for 40 years of his working career. And I remember I came home after my first semester, my grades weren't great. In fact, he asked if I tried to get those grades. And I was living at home.
Ooh, ouch.
I was living at home, and he said, well, here's what's going to happen. He goes, school's clearly not a full-time job for you. And if you're going to continue to live in this house, then you're going to go work 30 hours a week somewhere. And you're going to get these grades. Otherwise, you should just get a job. College, you don't have to do college.
See that front door over there?
Yeah, and it wasn't that way. It's like, hey, okay, you messed around for a semester, but if we're going to continue to live at home and we're going to not go to school, then it's not a full-time job. And even my dad admitted, he goes, for nobody is college full-time. I mean, think back to your college.
No.
Right? You go to class, what? How many classes do you even have? Like 5 or 6 a week?
I don't remember. It's been a long time, but it's not full-time.
So kids can work their way through college.
Well, you can work. You can play a sport. You can do a lot of stuff. The academic requirements are not that great.
No, it doesn't. You don't have to come out with a 4.0 to get a job, a good job.
Well, and just even, the workload. But you compare being a college student to having a career and having a family, it's not even close comparison as far as how busy you are on a day-to-day basis.
All right. That's a really good analogy because we didn't have kids for the first 13 years we were married. We always felt like we were busy. Now we have kids. We're trying to figure out what we were doing with all of our time. Seriously, kids are the next level. You have 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're busy all the time. I can look at your calendar. I see softball, soccer. I'm sure your son's going to start here.
Don't remind me.
You're going to need a new minivan.
Dude, all of a sudden I got like crap in my throat.
It's all right. We're going to wrap it up. So, Rick, I think to answer your question, I don't want to beat on it too much, but you need to figure out where you're at. And that can help answer the question if you can afford to help your son with college this year. Okay. Or start funneling money to those investments. And if you're on track and you want to do that, then I think that's a great thing to do. But I just want to make sure financially you're in a good spot. With that said, if anybody out there has a specific question that's burning on your mind or you can't sleep about something, reach out to the show. Let us know what it is. We'd be happy to answer it on air. It's really likely that there's other people similar to you that have the same exact question, and we want to bring it to light. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show today. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe on our YouTube, X, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're on all of the platforms. I want to thank you for listening, and we hope you catch us next week.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure a profit or protect against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure a profit or protect against loss. Dollar cost averaging involves continuous investment in securities regardless of fluctuations in price levels. Investors should consider their ability to continue purchasing through periods of low price levels. Such a plan does not assure a profit and does not protect against loss in declining markets. Consult your tax professional about eligibility to Roth and traditional IRA contributions. Contributions and earnings in a Roth IRA can be withdrawn without paying taxes and penalties if the account owner is at least 59.5 and has held their Roth IRA for at least 5 years. A plan participant leaving an employer typically has 4 options and may engage in a combination of these options, each choice offering advantages and disadvantages. Those options include leave the money in their former employer's plan if permitted, roll over the assets to their new employer's plan if one is available and rollovers are permitted, roll over to an IRA, or cash out the account value.